The Flammable Cladding Tax. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. I'm Florian Heise, and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I have my evening stein of coffee, and I thought we would have a look at the Flammable Cladding Tax. Now, an email was sent out a few days ago from the VBA, the Victorian Building Authority. Just going to check to make sure that's what they're actually called. Yes, it is. Now, the VBA sent this letter out to people regarding their additional building permit levy, or as I like to call it, the Flammable Cladding Tax, because as we looked at a few months ago, we can see here, now I spoke about this in July, the government is to replace the flammable cladding, the Victorian government, and I'll link to that video in a card above. So now, how they are paying for it is starting to come to, well, we knew about it then, now it's actually coming into fruition. So, an additional building permit levy to fund cladding rectification work will apply from New Year's Day. So here's a question I put to you. What about all the builders that imported this dodgy product, or all the importers that brought in these dodgy products that were not compliant, or the deceptive practices from certain suppliers? Do you think the government is going to recoup it from them? Perhaps they will. I hope they will. And then do you think they will actually refund this levy to everyone who had to pay it? What do you reckon, guys? Let me know in the comments if you think. Because I get the feeling there's a moral hazard here, and the government is taking money from one group to offset another. The new levy applies to building work in metropolitan areas with a cost of work of at least $800,000 and a classification of 2 to 8 under the National Construction Code. So 2 to 8, Class 1 is detached houses, Class 10 is garages and bushfire shelters and stuff. So a lot of buildings, a lot of work, a lot of commercial work, a lot of multi-res work will all get caught under this. The levy does not apply to standalone houses or other Class 1 buildings. The VBA estimates that 3% of all building permit applications will attract the additional levy. 3% from a numerical basis. I wonder how much from a financial basis. The Victorian government is introducing the additional levy to fund cladding rectification work for buildings found to have the highest fire safety risk. This isn't for all of the buildings. It's only those that are having the highest fire safety risk. Like this building here that we looked at in another video. It's with all the polystyrene cladding as well. And the thing is, this stuff shouldn't comply with it's an issue with information provided. It shouldn't comply with the codes. You can light it on fire. Building permit applicant accepted by building surveyors on or after the 1st of January 2020 will be subject to the new levy, which is estimated to raise $300 million over 5 years. The VBA will distribute the funds collected from the levy to Cladding Safety Victoria, the agency managing the rectification of the highest risk buildings. So this means everyone involved in this process is going to have to pay an extra levy for every building permit issued. This is a tax, guys. And I mean, the system's failed to this extent anyway that we've gotten in this mess. An online levy calculator is now available on the VBA website to provide industry with an estimate of the total levy payable. Building surveyors will use the Building Assessment Management System to calculate the total building permit levy payable from the 1st of January 2020. So I wonder if a whole lot of them are pushing through applications really quick. So let's jump to the VBA website. Let's have a look at some of these cladding rectification, the FAQ. We'll look at it here. I'll just zoom in here and you can see it. So, in July 2019, the state government announced its intention to address combustible cladding through a program of grants to fund rectification works for high-risk buildings. The proposed funding arrangement for the grants included the introduction of changes to the building permit levy. Well, no. The introduction of another levy. They've already got other levies as well. Now they're putting another one on there. to raise $300 million, representing half of the $600 million funding announced over the next 5 years. Amendments to the Building Act 1993 and the Building Amendment Cladding Rectification Act 2019 will provide for the building permit levy to include an additional cladding levy component. This component is known as the Cladding Rectification Levy. These amendments will commence on the 1st of January 2020. To estimate the cladding rectification levy payable, use our building permit calculator. We may have a look at that. Provisions that require building surveys to calculate the amount of levy payable when applying for a building permit number have been repealed, removing some of the regulatory burden on relevant building surveyors. It is important to note that an RBS will still be required to provide the VBA with information relating to prescribed events each month. To find out more information on the legislative changes underpinning the additional levy, view the Building Amendments Cladding Rectification Act 2019 on the Victorian Legislation and Parliamentary Documents website. And this was just updated on the 18th of this month, so just yesterday. So let's have a look. Which building permits are subject? So Class 2 to 8 that are not located in regional Victoria as defined in Section 18.8 of the First Homeowner Grant Act. So we'll jump here. Oh boy, let's just go back to the FAQ and see if they can tell us here. So what is defined as regional Victoria? Regional Victoria is defined by reference to the First Homeowners Grant Act, which its regional municipal councils and alpine resorts included within the definition. So I will let you go through that on your own accord, but guys, this is just another tax. So, which BCA classes are subject to the levy? So Class 2, which are apartments, Class 3 are hotels, Class 4 dwellings attached to commercial buildings, Class 5 offices, Class 6 shops, Class 7 car parks and warehouses, Class 8 laboratories and factories. The building work involves multiple NCC class types. The RBS must determine and enter into BAM's information for the primary NCC code for that building permit. So what rates of additional cladding rectification, what are they payable? So here we go. For applicable buildings with a cost of works, single stage project, or cost of hall of building works, multiple stage of works of 800,000 or more, the following rates of cladding rectification levy are payable. So between 800 and a million, 0.128 cents in the dollar. Between 1 million and 1.5, 0.256 cents in the dollar. 1.5 million or more, 0.82 cents in the dollar. If a staged permit is required for works that are solely for an NCC Class 2 to 8 building or for multiple purpose buildings that is at least one part that is NCC Class 2 or 8, the additional cladding rectification levy is calculated on the entirety of the building work. So there you go. Is additional cladding, what's this one? Is additional cladding rectification levy payable on the entire cost of works or only on the parts that exceed the various threshold? The rectification levy is calculated on the entire cost of work. So if you go up higher, you have to pay more. Are there any specific exemptions from the cladding rectification levy? Certain social housing projects will be exempt from the cladding rectification components of the building permit levy. The exemption will be limited to certain social housing projects funded under the Director of Housing. Regulations will be introduced in early 2020 detailing how this exemption is intended to apply. Building works on Commonwealth Crown land retain the current exemption from any build permit levy, including the new cladding rectification levy. So the government isn't going to be paying its own levy. From what point in the building permit application process will the cladding rectification levy amendments commence? Application for a building permit that are accepted by an RBS before the commencement date will not be subject to the new cladding rectification levy. Okay, so people can get out of it if they did it beforehand. And how long will the levy be in place? The legislative amendments require the Minister for Planning to ensure that a review of the cladding rectification levy is undertaken no later than 4 years after commencement. The purpose of the review is to determine whether there is an ongoing need for that additional levy to continue funding cladding rectification works. What do you think, guys? Do you think there will be an ongoing need to fund that? Do you think there will be? So, I mean, this is just another tax, guys. That's what this is. This is another tax. And the certifiers, the building surveyors, they're already, well, in a difficult state at the moment. Their industry is in a lot of trouble with getting insurance. And they've got an aging profession too, so people are pulling out. So at least now we know how Andrews is implementing it. Just taxing. Putting another tax on. What do you think sounds better? A levy or a tax? And all of these things, all of these costs, I know it may seem small, but they all add up. They all add up. Government's not been nice. This is a major broken window fallacy here, all this work. $300 million in 5 years in Victoria that is getting diverted to just rectifying issues, what's the opportunity cost of that? As I spoke about in a video this morning. Where could that money have been deployed better? Well, guys, there's a lot of systematic issues in the construction industry at the moment. Please let me know what you think. Have you encountered any buildings that have these issues? Would you happily pay this levy on your project if it's a couple of grand more? Let us know in the comments below. So guys, thank you for watching this episode. If you're a fan of the channel and want to help us produce more, I have a Patreon where you can make a small monthly donation. We also have merchandise at the Heise Says website, our very own pocket squares, handcrafted here in Queensland. We have affiliate links with Amazon and eBay where we receive a commission every time you make a purchase. Doesn't cost you a cent. If you're a crypto enthusiast, we have a referral relationship with Independent Reserve where we receive a portion of your trading fees. Guys, thank you all very much for joining me for today's episode, and I will see you all again later. Take care.